Welcome to 843 TV. I'm your host, Carrie Manning.
And I'm Will Wareham with WHHI-TV. We're coming to you today from Memory Matters on Hilton Head Island. And our first guest is John Weymouth, who is the Vice Chairman of the Board of Directors for the Community Foundation of the Lowcountry.
And our second guest is Miss Kendall Malfris. She's the Executive Director at the Jasper County Chamber of Commerce.
And we're going to wrap the show up talking with Carrie about Deo Valente Salon and some of the trending looks and styles for the holiday season. So stick around for more 843 TV.
Where communities come to speak.
843 TV, where Bluffton comes to speak.
Where Spring Island comes to speak.
Where Hilton Head Island comes to speak.
Where Port Royal comes to speak.
.843 TV,
where communities come to speak. Welcome to 843 TV. We are joined today by Mr. John Weymouth, who is the Vice Chairman of the Board of Directors for the Community Foundation of the Lowcountry. John, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Will. As the name suggests, the Community Foundation, the aim of this organization is to improve the entire community across a broad-based effort. Most non-profits have a unique mission or cause, but we seek to work across education, environment, health and human services, the gamut of the fields that needs help in our community. And we do it through a number of things. Grant support to organizations, to non-profit organizations that have specific projects and initiatives. We do it through scholarships. There's more than $54 million have been granted in that way over the last 21 years since our inception. But we also have other initiatives. The public art exhibition that's going on right now at the Coastal Discovery Museum at Honeyhorn is a part of our effort. We also have a program to educate donors, to make them well informed about their giving decisions. This is called the Giving Marketplace. And finally, we through the efforts of our CEO, Denise Spencer, we do board training for both board members and staff. It's called Board Roles and Responsibilities, and that sort of leads into what we're discussing here today.
Absolutely, yeah. So you're Vice Chairman of the Board of Directors, right?
Right.
And with so many nonprofit organizations here in the Lowcountry, there's obviously hundreds of board members, right, for all of these nonprofits. As a board member yourself and Vice Chairman of the Board of Directors for the Community Foundation of the Lowcountry, what are your thoughts about those who are considering entering the world of board leadership?
Well, first and foremost, I would suggest that board members need to have a love for the organization that they're working for, and particularly for those being served by the organization. This is not about building a resume.
Right.
Now, the boards have very specific responsibilities, obviously, setting strategic direction, developing the CEO, responsible for legal and fiduciary issues, resourcing, and so on. These are quite similar to any board activity. But herein lies the issue, and that is that most of us that sit on non-profit boards come from the corporate, the small business, the public sector world, and we come in blazing with our enthusiastic about our skills, our preconceived notion. We have skills and that have served us very well in the past. Right. These don't always translate to the non-profit community, and I think what's really important is that new board members understand the roles and responsibilities of the organization that they're joining, that they form a really strong bond and partnership with their board colleagues, the CEO, the staff of the organization, and they're willing to spend the time and effort to go and learn new skills.
Absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't always, translate from, like as you said, in the private sector to a nonprofit sector. You've got different ways of doing things.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Well, you mentioned that the nonprofit board leadership is different in a number of ways from corporate, small business, and the government service. Can you explain some of those differences?
Yes, I think there are a number of differences, and it starts with the mission of the organization. The mission of a corporation is often to meet an unmet need, but to generate a profit, a return on investment. The mission of a non-profit is certainly to satisfy an unmet need or that has been often left vacant by the corporate or public sector worlds. However, one of the major problems that we have is that our return on investment in non-profit is the impact that we have on those being served. It's the positive outcomes that the community at large receives from that non-profit organisation, and these are quite difficult to measure, and it's quite difficult to build a strategy around. You know, take for example, a food pantry does fantastic work, but how do you measure their impact on the root causes of poverty? A very tough challenge to do that. There are other differences as well. Ownership, obviously, shareholders on one hand. A non-profit has a broad-based ownership base of donors, of clients, of community members, often a national organisation. And the board has a responsibility to pull those folks together to get participation and commitment in order to deliver against the mission that they're trying to serve. Another important difference is in the area of financing and funding. On the one hand, you've got shareholders. On the other hand, you've got donors, you've got grant makers, you've got a myriad of fundraising events that non-profit board members are always concerned about. And I'd say the final area that I see is organisational capacity. A non-profit is very often something like a small business. It has a small number of people, folks wear multiple hats. Some of the critical skills, such as financing and marketing, have to be outsourced or, in often cases, taken on by board members. I think understanding all of those differences is important for new board members as they enter their new job.
Well, training program seems very significant. So what is something that they need to learn about? How would the new recruits learn about those differences?
Well, firstly, start before the new board member gets on the job. You know, that's what happens in a corporation. Then a non-profit should expect the same thing. Volunteering is a good way to accelerate that learning process. That's what happened to me right here in Memory Matters. I met folks, I got involved in the organisation, and that as a volunteer, and that led to becoming a board member. Serving on a committee is another important activity. That's something that we in the Community Foundation require as a prerequisite to board service in most cases. So those are activities that can get people into the act of understanding what their role in the non-profit board is all about.
Preparation.
Exactly.
It's like every other thing, you need to be prepped first before you realize what you're getting yourself into, basically.
Yes.
And not.
Exactly
Well,
right.
John, we could spend a whole half hour talking about the nonprofit organizations here in the Lowcountry and the nonprofit organizations they serve. But we're out of time for this segment, so thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Will. Appreciate it.
And stick around for another segment of 843 TV.